Yes. So now we will have Cansu Canca joining us. She is the ethical lead of the Experiential AI Institute, and she's joining us from Turkey. So it is a bit late for you. So thank you for being here, Cansu.
No problem. It's my pleasure to be here.
So instead of presentation, we decided we'll do like a fireside chat, and I think that could be more interesting because I will ask the people to ask questions as we speak, so we can have a Q&A in the middle of this shorter presentation. Now that Tracy took almost 10 minutes, so let's start with the basics. Why we are using the term responsible AI and not, for example, ethical AI or trustworthy AI?
So I think first of all, I think to give the audience a little bit background, Ricardo and I work together, and these are the questions that we've been discussing most of the time. So we are sort of like playing it out right now and discussing the things that we are constantly facing. So why do we use responsible AI? Because so the way that we usually use the responsible AI, we usually say responsible AI practice or responsible AI services, but even if when we say responsible AI just by itself, it is a better phrase, I argue, than trustworthy AI or ethical AI. The problem with the ethical AI and trustworthy AI, they have different issues. So ethical AI has the problem that it sounds as if we are assigning a capacity for moral behavior to the AI system. So it sounds as if when we say ethical AI, the system is intentionally making moral judgments or has any capacity to make moral judgments. Instead, what we are really dealing with is the systems that have, when humans embed value judgments into AI systems and the system is just applying that. And with the trustworthy AI, there's another type of jump that we are making, which is it sounds as if we are allowing an AI system to create a trust relationship with humans, which is again problematic because AI systems are created by humans, and if we are going to trust anything, I would even say it shouldn't be even the individual humans that we are trusting, but we should trust the structure, the regulation, the processes within which the AI system is produced, not AI systems themselves. So just like we don't say my house is trustworthy, but we will trust the construction, the processes, and the experts in the field. We don't. It doesn't make that much of a sense to talk about a trustworthy AI. It seems to lead us to take the responsibility away from the humans and the structures, processes that we put in place as we are creating and deploying these AI systems. It seems to take the responsibility away and put it to AI, which is something that we should definitely not do.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't have time to discuss with Ben because in the elevator example, it's not only that we are in control, but also it works all the time, or almost all the time, 90.99% of the time. But I'm sure no one of you will take an elevator that says that work 99% of the time, and you don't know what will happen the rest 1% of the time. So yeah, it's only 1 in 100, but maybe this time, and you will not take the risk. So asking people to just things that don't work all the time, I think is also not completely ethical for me, at least personally.
Yeah. So, and I would say, sorry, yeah, Ricardo, but one could argue that responsible AI has a similar problem. It sounds like AI is responsible, but that's why we are trying to, generally, what I try to do is to say responsible AI practice or things like that. So add something more to it. And also, I haven't, somehow I think responsible AI is such an artificial phrase that people don't immediately connect responsibility with AI. At least that's the hope, until they come up with a term.
Yeah, it's not a perfect term either, but at least it doesn't harm any people if it fails, for example. If you trust and it fails, then it's like not the thing that you want. Yeah. So let's go to, because your ethics, your specialty, and many people don't know this topic very well, and Tracy already mentioned part of this, and Ben also mentioned this, and many people is eager to know a little bit more about ethics. Why you don't tell us the difference between ethics principles and then instrumental principles that we use as principles, like say, explainability? that really are not ethical principles.
Yeah. So let me start by explaining it a little bit, and then I will show you also a tool that we created. So it's the thing with AI ethics principles. It's a very interesting phenomenon that happened with AI ethics principles. So in the applied ethics field, like in research ethics or in medical ethics, bioethics, we have been using principles, but they are 3 principles, and not every organization publishes their own principles. And those 3 principles are 3 core values, we call them actually, are derived from the moral and political philosophy. So I'll show you in a bit, but they are respect for autonomy, respect for individual autonomy, human autonomy, minimization, prevention of harm, and justice. And from these 3 principles, there has been several instruments that have been devised, like informed consent. So think about informed consent. So it connects with individual autonomy. It allows the patient or the research subject to exercise their autonomy. What happened with AI ethics principles is that every company, every organization started publishing those principles, and it got a little fuzzy. So things like, well, let me start sharing my screen, which is which might be a little. Let's try this.
Let me add in the meantime that, for example, fairness will be an application of justice.
Yes. So,
and then, for example, no discrimination will be a principle of minimizing harm.
So the way to think about this is like we have 3 main principles: autonomy, harm, benefit, and justice. I mean, this is, when I say we have, I'm using this principalism framework that was structured in 1970s for the purposes of applied ethics, but specifically biomedical and behavioral research ethics. And these 3 principles these 3 core values are really derived from, I mean, if you are into philosophy, Kantian ethics, autonomy; utilitarian or consequentialism for the harm-benefit balance; and justice really covers all theories of justice. So there's no real differentiation there. But these are the goals of our ethical inquiry, our ethical process. In comparison, things like transparency, privacy, safety, these are instruments. We don't value them for their own sake. So it's very important to differentiate these, because we cannot say, for example, there's an ethical dilemma because on the one hand, there is the problem of autonomy. On the other hand, there is a question of efficiency, because efficiency is an instrument. We have to look at, okay, but like how do we do in the prevention of harm? If we are doing well with using other instruments, then there is no deep ethical problem that we are facing. You can also think about it like this. For example, consent here connects to individual autonomy, and in ways where, so here's a scale. So this is a tool that we created at AIethics Lab, and now we are using it in our services in Northeastern as well. And we actually have been revising this and making it better. So the purpose here is to show the instrumental principles as they connect to the core values, and then provide a visual way of thinking, how does your project fare in terms of these principles? Like, did you manage to get consent, or was consent irrelevant, so not applicable? But this is a way to sort of also show, for example, if your consent was not doing well, but you actually might be needing it because you are using identifiable information. Well, one way to deal with it, well, can you make it de-identified? So you can see that there is a relation between these instruments, and their purpose by themselves, we don't need to fetishize them. Their purpose is to really uphold autonomy. So we created this tool called the Box to help non-philosophers to make sense of these principles. And you would see that when you look at most organizations' principles, they don't fit this structure. They are conceptually really confusing, because it would say fairness and privacy, for example, whereas fairness is a huge question. It's a core value, just like justice. It's usually we use fairness and justice interchangeably, but the privacy is not. It's an instrument. It serves a purpose. So I'm just gonna stop sharing now so that I can see the screen again.
Yeah, we will share this place where you can play with the box, because it was hard to read, but I think that we get the point. There are more than 30 properties that software have, and with Cansu we have worked on this, and we believe between 18 and 23 are interesting for potential practical uses of this kind of idea. Yeah. So let's go to the last question in the last 5 minutes. We have less time now. Sorry, Cansu. I abuse of my power to take.
It's okay. We get to talk a lot. It's okay.
Yeah. So I think the last question is how we're using your Pi model in our system, and how we are enhancing that to have a more holistic view of responsible AI, and that will partially answer the question is why is different from explainable AI and other types of AI, and how we look at the problem.
Yeah. So again, let me start by explaining it without the screen, and then I'll show you the screen as well. So the whole idea of so the Pi model, puzzle solving in ethics, is a model that I developed at AIethics Lab, and now we are using it at the Institute for Experiential AI, but we are also adding more components to it. So if you think of AI ethics really focusing on the ethics, so the philosophy's job, like making these value judgments, in responsible AI, one can say that we are working much more closely, literally collaboratively, with all these other disciplines, and add more functions to it. So what we did with the responsible AI is to add more functions, more components to the Pi model. Let me share my screen to show that as well. By the way, when I'm showing the screen, I don't see you, so you might, I won't be able to read any cues either, so you have to use voice.
I will be your eyes.
Yes, thank you. So here's the responsible AI journey that we have for the as we provide responsible AI services from the Institute for Experiential AI. The Pi model is what you see in the main roads, and the additional components are the ones that we added for now, and we are gonna add more components as we go as we proceed. So the whole idea here is to integrate responsible AI in a comprehensive and structured manner. The middle part, AI ethics analysis, is what we really are trying to, it's like at the heart of what we are doing. What we want to do is for every project, every product that goes out, every system that we create, there is an AI ethics analysis that is done, meaning we know the ethical risks, but we also know the value that it might add. So what are the opportunities, ethical opportunities that it creates? Keep in mind that what we are trying to do with the responsible AI is not just to like minimize the harm, just hold back. But what we want to do is there are so many problems in the world, and we want AI systems to be able to help those problems as well. So in every project, we are integrating ethics component, ethics risk assessment, ethical puzzle solving, problem solving, troubleshooting, ethics by design into the project. And in order to do this in the most efficient and seamless manner, well, we need to make it a part of the company's organization's general governance. So for that, we have the AI ethics strategy. AI ethics strategy really contains the whole of what you want to do as a part of the AI ethics and responsible AI. So the playbook should have all the materials, tools, principles, use cases for ethical decision making. Process is how we integrate this ethics analysis into the operations of different divisions, and people is who is going to do this. And who is going to do this, by the way, let me just give a quick answer, not just a chief ethics officer and not just developers who are taking a few classes and try to figure out this whole philosophical question of, massive literature. So what we want to do is to make use of everyone, in the sense that having ethics experts dealing with complex questions, having skilled and trained practitioners who can solve non-complex questions and escalate the difficult ones to the team, and having a strategy board that aligns the ethical path with the company's general path. And finally, to do that, we need to train people. So this is the PI model. In addition to that, now that we have the Northeastern's capabilities, we also added an independent AI ethics advisory board, which can help with the questions related to the product or project, or generally for governance. And for that, we bring together experts from around the world with different backgrounds, specifically customized to the needs of the organization. And we added technical AI audit and AI system registry, because, I mean, the AI ethics analysis really relies on the technical AI audit, as well as, you know, all the social sciences impact analysis and so on. So you can't do the analysis in the void. So we are adding these different capabilities as well to make sure that we understand the situation as good as possible, and we have the capacity to help solve the problems and puzzles as well as possible.
So we'll talk a bit more about the AI ethics board on the closing ceremony, but we have time for just one question from the audience.
Okay.
Is there a cheat sheet for each and everyone to follow basic ethical practice, thereby influencing data sets collected and eventually AI performance?
I mean, this question really contains both the good and the bad.
Yes.
So there is, like, think about it like this. Is there a cheat sheet available for me to become an AI scientist or to become a legal expert? No.
There are some people have done that, but I think they don't work.
Okay, exactly my point. Exactly my point. I think people have done that and it's not going to work, so don't waste your money on it. But are there tools that can guide you to figure out, for example, whether what you're dealing with is a high-risk question or not, or what are the questions that you should be keeping in mind, like ethical questions? Well, the box is one of those, for example. It gives you, as Ricardo said, 18 to 23, but we are customizing it according to the organization as well. Principles, basically points of questions to ask when you are looking at your product and say, well, I think we might have a problem related to, let's say, transparency, and we need to discuss this further. But that's about it. Like, that's at the level of, like, can you solve the non-complex questions using these type of cheat sheets? Yes. And it's very important, because a lot of the questions that we see doesn't come from not super complex issues. It comes from because you never asked the question. You never actually thought about the risks, or you never thought about the value that this product might add, or does it justify the risk? So once you ask those questions, you really get really far. But as soon as you hit a complex question, there is no cheat sheet. Well, come and do a PhD in philosophy.
Well, thank you, Cansu, for this conversation. It was very complimentary to what we already discussed, and now we will finish the morning session with gender in AI, so that also will complement what you just mentioned. So thank you, and good night.
You're very welcome. My pleasure, and have a good session. Bye.